Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you're at across the globe listening to this webinar. I'll just wait another 30 seconds or so and then get going. Thank you everybody for getting on this webinar today. I'd like to thank the D365 community for inviting me to participate and to facilitate this webinar for you. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jared McGrath and I'm the founder of an organisation called Smart Workforce Management. Workforce management is a discipline that I am very passionate about. It's a discipline that's part of human resources, and I'll speak a little bit more about that as we go on today. If you have any questions throughout this webinar, then please raise them, and what I'll do is I'll stop at appropriate points through the webinar and answer those questions for you. Today, what I will speak about is workforce management and how it impacts people in your organisation, how it impacts customers, and what the digital impacts of workforce management are on your people. This webinar today will have a non-technical focus, and it will look at workforce management through the lens of a customer. So the webinar is scheduled to go for 30 minutes, and without any further ado, I will begin. So I'll start today with a statistic. Only 7% of organisations manage their workforce effectively. And that statistic is quite a staggering statistic for me. I think in 2017, you would expect that workforces are managed more effectively. And I guess when you look at that, you can look at it from two perspectives. One is you can say that's bad, or two is you can say what a great opportunity to manage workforces in a more efficient and effective manner. And what we'll do today in understanding that figure and why that figure might be so low is we'll look at the evolution of workforce management. And workforce management has been evolving for 120 years. And originally, when workforce management started, it was started based off the Bundy clock. And the Bundy clock was an automated machine for collecting start and stop times of employees when they arrived and left work. Those start and stop times ultimately started to feed into payroll so that employees could get paid correctly. And that was the infancy or the birth of workforce management. And what we found is that over time, the functions that workforce management provided increased. And in the 1980s, with the invention of the microprocessor, it meant that those start and stop times could actually be automated through an electronic timekeeping device. And once you had those times in an automated manner, you could then determine how much someone gets paid by applying logic to those start and stop times. And many of you would be aware of awards that are legislated instruments by which people get paid. So what you could do is you could automate the payments and the calculations of those awards. Once you were able to automate that, you were then able to gain real-time cost visibility, because there was a program running, and what that program enabled you to do was to actually see the costs of your staff and your workers in real time. And what that then meant is that those costs could be dealt with in a meaningful way. And supervisors were able to see who in their teams had turned up for work, what their costs were, and they could make decisions during the day that would actually help make those workers more efficient. And if you roll forward now to where we're at in the 2000s, there's all sorts of functions available these days. There is wearable technology, there's mobile technology, there's tablets, there's desktops, there is all sorts of artificial intelligence algorithms that can run on this data, and ultimately you can now see your staff, be able to forecast what staff you need based off demand. You can make predictions of cost and of revenue, and you're able to provide your employees a lot greater flexibility. So I thought it would be worth starting this webinar just by giving a context of the evolution of workforce management, just to try and help position where this actually fits. And if I look at workforce management, it's actually a discipline of human resources. And if I was to look at the human resources discipline, there's probably three core areas that make up what's known as human resources. And I would define those as core HR, which is essentially your staff, your people master records, your compensation, your performance management of those staffs. There's talent acquisition, which is essentially identifying the staff and the skills and getting them available to work for your organisation. And then once you actually have that talent, workforce management then kicks in to basically look after that talent on a day-to-day basis. So with that in mind, what I'll now do is I'll look at the impacts of workforce management on your people, your customers, and the impacts of digital around this. So from a people perspective, if I was to look at the type of things that workforce management can do from a people perspective, it can give real-time management. And if I look at the lady that's pictured on the screen at the moment, that lady, that's Jill, and she's a nursing unit manager. So she works in a hospital and she looks after patients within that hospital. And she looks after teams of nurses who look after those patients in the hospital. And what she can do with workforce management is she can see which of her team are available, where they're rostered to work, which departments they're located in, how many of those staff are working at the moment, what type of people forecast she might need for today or tomorrow, and she's also able to determine what the cost of those people are. So workforce management is a very practical tool from an operational perspective. And if you look at it more broadly within the context of human resources, you're able to develop leaders within your team. You are able to develop competencies within your staff members. So if you're a nurse, you might need certain skills or competencies before you can walk into an operating theatre, for example. And it also enables you to create learning paths for those people within your team. And the benefits that you get overall from having effective workforce management in place is that you're able to get much more efficient processes because you're automating many of those tasks that are manual. So, for example, you can automatically send the shifts to your nurses that they need to work over the next 5 days, for example. And then those nurses will, when they turn up to work, they'll know where they need to work and what wards they need to work in. So you can get a lot of process efficiency through workforce management. As well as that, you're able to gain a much clearer understanding of the financial side of what it means. So if I enable 3 people to work overtime today, I know what the impacts of the financial impacts of that overtime is, and I'm also able to determine whether I actually need those people and what the cost implications are of that. Having workforce management also enables you to have a complete view of your workforce. So if I'm Jill, the nursing unit manager, I can see all the staff that are available to me, not just in my ward that I'm responsible for or my area that I'm responsible for, but I can actually see which staff are in the hospital that may also be able to assist in my ward. So if I have people that are sick today and I need to replace them and I don't have enough replacements within my team, I can then look out to other teams to help with the staffing shortfall that I have. And overall, I see one of the biggest benefits from a people perspective, and if I look at Jill again, the nursing unit manager, she can then focus her time on real value-add tasks as opposed to administrative operational tasks. And the ultimate benefit is that Jill, from a nursing perspective, can concentrate on quality of care initiatives, making sure that her staff are developed, making sure that the service that her patients are expecting and demanding is actually able to be provided. So from a people perspective, that's a lot of the benefits that workforce management can bring. If I move on now and I look at what the next area, and I'll start at another statistic, inspired employees are 3 times more productive than dissatisfied employees. So making sure that your employees are inspired is a great benefit, not only to the employee, but to your organisation. And another statistic that flows on from that, only 1 in 8 employees are inspired. So there are enormous benefits from having employees that are inspired. And once you've got inspired employees as well, that ultimately flows on to your customer. Because, and I'll give another example now, I'll move on to an example in the retail industry. If you have an inspired employee, that will flow through to the way in which they interact with your customers when they walk into the store. If you've got an employee that's not happy or upset or didn't know that they had to be at work today or whatever it happens to be, that customer experience that employee gives won't be an optimal employee experience. So by looking at areas of workforce management, and I'll take a few examples now, just a simple one, availability, knowing when you need to work. you can actually use your system, your technology to, if I'm an employee, you can set your availability. When am I available to work? What times can I come in? What shifts can I work on? Similarly, that then flows through to your managers, and they then know when you're available to work. And as well as that, you're able to take things such as sales forecasts. So if I'm a retail store and it's a Thursday evening and I'm open for late night shopping, I know from historical trends or data that I'm expecting a certain volume of customers into my store on this particular evening. And then what I'm able to do is I'm actually able to plan for the staff that I need to be in the store that night to fill those shifts correctly, so that you're actually able to fill the right service levels to those customers that are in your store. If I then look at what that means from a HR perspective, it means that we are able to ensure that the right talent is in our stores. We're able to ensure that that talent that is there has the right skills to look after your customers. And those managers that actually look after those talent, those managers are able to ensure that the performance of that team is adequate and are able to give feedback to those team members as well. So from a customer perspective, there are many benefits of workforce management. And if I take it up to a broader level, it actually enables you to personalize customer experiences by spending the right amount of time with your customers. It helps, once you've got the right people in your team there, it actually helps to build a better culture, a stronger culture. When you're looking after your customers in an effective way, you can make your customers more loyal to your brand. And with all of these areas being efficient, it actually helps drive purpose from the managers and inspiration into your team members. So the benefits that you can gain from a team and a customer perspective are very significant. Another statistic now, just before I talk about digital, 85% of companies will invest extensively in artificial intelligence over the next 3 years, but only 17% are ready to manage a workforce made up of artificial intelligence, robots, and people. So while digital is coming at us at a rate of knots, there's not a lot of organisations that are actually ready to embrace digital at this point in time. So when you introduce digital into a workforce, it brings with it a new dimension, and you may have jobs that are now being completed by a human. And if I take a simple example, you might have a call centre operator who now answers a phone, and someone rings in, call centre operator answers a phone. In the future, with text recognition and advancements in artificial intelligence and decision-making algorithms, you may be able to replace that person that takes the frontline call now with a robot. And you might sort of say, well, some organisations already do that at the current time, which they do. But if you start taking these robots to replace a human task, and these robots are actually learning from the interactions that they have with those callers, then those workforce robots, if they actually break down, for example, you will need to replace that robot either with another robot because your you're needing to be able to take those first level calls that come into your organization. Or you might need to actually replace that robot with a human, because it will still be necessary to be able to take that call so that people can continue to contact your organization. So you will need to treat these robots, which I'm terming as workforce robots, very much like humans. So they'll need to be rostered like a human, and if they break down, that would be equivalent to a human getting sick. You will then need to find a suitable replacement for that robot. From a HR perspective, what might this mean? It might then mean that those people in your call centre, for example, that were taking the calls, they may need to be reskilled, or they may need to be repurposed, because that job that they did is now being done by a robot. So it means from a human resources point of view that you need to be very cognizant of what these changes are going to mean for your business, and how you're actually going to deal with those people that may no longer being required for a job that they've done for some time. Similarly, there is also a need to consider from a HR perspective what policy changes you might need to put in place as a result of that. Does someone's role change? Do they need to do a different role? Do they actually have a job after this digital transformation takes place? These are all real considerations that need to be taken into consideration as you're making these decisions to automate. So what are some of the benefits, though, that you can get from having a digital workforce? It means that you can drive a higher level of automation into some of your roles, any roles that are repetitive, any roles that you can learn from are very well suited to digital transformation. Once you start to automate, you can then gain quite a few efficiency improvements through those roles, because you're basically using machines to do what a human once did. A lot of these roles you're able to complete from a mobility perspective as well. Many of these tasks, these digital tasks, can now take place from a mobile perspective, which also enables workforces to be dispersed. And if I go back to the example of availability, in the example of the nursing unit manager, or in a retail environment, the staff in your organisation can be working on a mobile. They can be somewhere away from your place of work, and they can easily interact with what is happening from a workforce perspective. And over time, what we're going to see more and more of is that the technology layers that your staff interact with will be very cognizant of the environment that they're in. So if I get a shift offered to me and I'm out and about, I'm down the street, I'm out at a golf course, wherever I am, I will be able to see that shift offered to me. Similarly, I might wake up in the morning, and with all the advancements in technology and Internet of Things, I might wake up and I might see on my fridge, because there's a screen on my fridge that says, hey, do you want to work today? So there's all sorts of considerations from a digitisation perspective, from a workforce point of view. But being cognizant of what these changes are and the types of changes that you might need to consider make this a very pragmatic process to go through from an organisational perspective to draw out the best for your people and your customers from a digital workforce. So if I summarise all of this, what does this really mean? workforce management has a significant impact on your business. It doesn't just touch one particular function in your business. It pretty much touches all the major functions in your business. There are implications on payroll, on your employees, on how your supervisors interact with your employees, on IT, from cloud deployment and digitization, finance, because it gives clarity around the cost of staff and prediction of staff costs. Operations management become quite involved in this as well, because they can now see how all of their organisation is operating. Senior management are able to better and more accurately forecast, and there's impacts on robots. So when you look at workforce management and you combine it with HR, it brings together many areas that can drive great culture in your organisation, enable you to deliver purpose, concentrate on improved quality, and enable your workforce to work in a very dispersed manner. So, in summary, workforce management and HR together give you a complete picture of people within your organisation. So moving on from a smart WFM perspective, what have we actually done? We've developed a methodology that is a client-centric methodology, which looks at what an organisation is trying to achieve from an organisational point of view, whether that's to increase revenue or decrease the cost of people or whatever that happens to be. And we have the first phase called Align, which basically takes an organisational vision and then turns that into a workforce strategy. Moving along, you basically prepare your business then for the changes that are coming, because when you're dealing with people, there are always quite significant change impacts on your organisation. You then get to an implement layer, which is where traditionally many organisations have focused for years, and it's still very important, but the technology is only a small part of the overall business change that needs to take place. Moving along, you then track your initiatives and the governance around those, and then most importantly, you put measures in place to make sure that those organisational objectives that you've determined in the alignment phase are actually delivered and they're measured against. We also offer a service called a Smart Check, and that Smart Check can take place at any phase in your methodology, and it can basically look in a very simplistic way. Normally it's just a 1 or 2 day engagement that basically says, from a workforce perspective, what are you trying to achieve and how are you tracking against achieving that? And then it just gives a very tangible gap assessment around what you're trying to achieve versus where you're at. So in conclusion, my question is workforce management part of your digital HR strategy to manage your workforce effectively? Once you've got that as part of your strategy, you've then got a complete people picture, and then you can measure and ensure your organisational objectives are being achieved. Finally, there is a book I'm writing at the moment. I am very proud to say that the book is The Digital Workforce. It's a 5-step method to smarter workforce management. It's with the editor at the moment, and we are getting very close to the published stage, and that will be coming early 2018. And that book essentially wraps the 20 years that I've been working in this industry into something that's quite tangible and can be used by you in your workforce initiatives to help drive those organisational outcomes that you're looking to achieve. My name's Jared McGrath. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to get on this webinar today. And if you have any questions coming out of this, feel free to send me an email, jm@smartwfm.com. Thanks to our friends at D365. Have a lovely day, and I hope to speak to you again soon.